Hey, ladies, the doctor is in. Technical difficulties today, but we're live on YouTube, and I'm going to stop and put a note on Facebook. But Dr. Mo is in surgery today, but I have some amazing. Hey, ladies, amazing. The doctor is in. Women on the technical difficulties today, but we're live on YouTube, and I'm going to stop and put a note on Facebook. So see if that helps. The replay. I have some phenomenal, brilliant, brainiac women on the show today, and I'm so excited. So, my friend Tia, my breasty bestie, who has been on before, who does amazing things in Atlanta with her many organizations and who's taken on the world, who works with Dr. Lauren McCullough, who I recently met and have been working with on a project with our Dr. Melissa, as you guys have seen her on the show. So Lauren is doing this phenomenal research about Black women and the social determinants of health and the factors that set Black breast cancer apart from white women and racism and all the things that are affecting us as patients. And so I just want to share her research with you. And Tia has been a part of it. So I would love for Dr. Lauren to give us a snapshot of all the many, many things she's working on. Her latest thing has really been, she's actually leading the research for the American Cancer Society study of 100,000 Black women. So she can speak to that, but just the work that you're doing is just changing the world and really making the world know what we as Black women are up against with this disease called Black breast cancer. So tell us all about it. And then Tia, you can chime in and talk about how you've been helping her and like all the good things that you're doing, and let's just talk. And Mo maybe come on in the meantime. And I'm going to try to get us on Facebook somewhere.
Sounds good, Ricky. Thanks for having me. Always delighted to be able to share the research with people who actually care about it and, for whom it matters. We've been studying, Black-white race differences in breast cancer in our group for, about a decade, and sort of shouting that, it's not all that they don't have health insurance. It's not all that, they don't have access. There are other things that are going on. And I think not until recently, obviously 2020, a lot happened that people began to sort of open their eyes and see the structural barriers that were preventing Black women from having, positive outcomes. And so that's really what our group is interested in and focused on. And I'll say one of the main reasons we really decided to dig deep into this topic was because one of our initial papers, which came out in 2019, showed that when we looked at the Black-white breast cancer mortality disparity, and we looked at it by sort of area, neighborhood, socioeconomics, we found that women that lived in very advantaged neighborhoods, so had access to care, high household incomes, high education, et cetera, actually had a bigger disparity compared to white women than women who lived in low socioeconomic neighborhoods. And that result has been one that I've repeated everywhere at the NIH, National Health Institutes, the National Cancer Institute, among colleagues. And people are just perplexed by this. Like, well, if they have insurance and they have healthcare, why are we not seeing equitable outcomes? And I'm like, because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter how much money you make, how much education you have. When you walk into that doctor's office, you are still a Black face. And there are other things that come along with that we are not capturing and we are not measuring, most of which is, racism and discrimination. So, that's what we study. We look at it from all kinds of angles, like what kind of neighborhoods people live in. We look at racist policies like historical redlining that happened in the 1930s that really put Blacks at a disadvantage from being able to get wealth based on their homes, because their homes were and their neighborhoods were deemed not worthy of investment. And then we look at day-to-day just provider biases and interactions. So happy to talk about any or all of those things. It's something I at least think about very deeply as a Black woman, interacting with the healthcare system all the time. I've experienced some of these things firsthand, so I know they're true and I know they're real. One of the hard things as a researcher is figuring out, like, how do I capture this in such a way that the white provider down the hall from me realizes that it's real. And that's where a lot of the work comes in with Tia, and hearing from women and hearing their stories, and, you know, trying to turn that into something that's compelling so that others understand that this is real and this is happening every day.
Wow. Can you quote your stat that we actually I put it in our e-blast, but
Yeah.
the 60% and the 126%, because that's like
Yeah.
mind
Yeah. Yeah. So that was in that 2019 paper, is that so Black women with private health insurance, you know, through their employers largely, are 60% more likely to die of breast cancer than white women with private insurance. And Black women living in these higher socioeconomic neighborhoods are 126% more likely to die of breast cancer compared to white women living in similar neighborhoods. And so, you know, I think those two statistics alone just show, you know, it's not as simple as saying, well, get everybody insurance, get everybody access. Like there are other complicated intersections at play that until recently no one was really thinking about. And you know, there was a recent paper that came out, I guess, a few weeks ago from the Black Women's Health Study. I sit on the external advisory board for that particular study. And this was about Black women in stroke, but I think the same thing is true for breast cancer. And it's that Black women that lived in these higher socioeconomic neighborhoods reported more incidents of racism from police, racism in healthcare, racial profiling, et cetera. And so there's also something about being in places where you are the minority that puts you at an increased risk of having these insults, having these biased interactions, discriminatory interactions that obviously takes a physiologic effect on your body, right? Like if you're under constant stress, that changes your immune patterns, it changes your inflammatory profiles, and all of that stuff we know feeds cancer. And so there's something about just the Black experience and interacting day to day that, you know, can't be compensated by being educated, can't be compensated by getting insurance, can't be compensated by living in a good neighborhood. You know, it's just, it's our society. And unfortunately, we still live in a very divided and discriminatory society.
It's really, I mean, Lauren, I really believe that my breast cancer was based on stress. I really do. And I had good insurance, and I lived in a nice neighborhood, and I had a good job and all the things. But I know I was internalizing all of the stuff in my life.
Yeah.
Be a happy person. But my body, because before I had breast cancer, I had yeast infections all the time. I had sinus infection. I had some kind of infection, sinus infection, something in my body. And I think eventually I got cancer.
Yep.
And I don't think we realize what those stresses are. And I think, look at the stresses of a Black woman.
Yeah. I mean, they're numerous, right? Like there are two primary hypotheses that I think are getting a lot of attention. Number one is this concept of shifting, right? And that Black women do more shifting day to day than any other gender or race or ethnic group. You know, we shift kind of in the morning when we're going to work, you know, trying to blend in, not be the angry Black woman, always monitoring what we say, how we say it, what we look like. And then you shift going back home, trying to be the matriarch of your family, taking care of the kids, being supportive of your partners. And then you shift to being like who you truly are. And all of this, that's a physiologic effect. Every time you have to move and maneuver, you know, whereas male counterparts don't think about that, right? And often the majority don't have to do that and don't think about that. And then the other concept is we suffer from superwoman schema. We are tasked with doing it all, and we know we can do it all, and we will do it all. And oftentimes we don't need to do it all. It's something I have to remind myself of constantly. But that is I think, cultural pressure that is on Black women. That's the societal pressure that's on women more generally. And all of that stuff comes at a cost. And usually that cost is to our health.
Yeah. And you know, why is it that we think we can do it all? And you know what? We can do it. We've all proven it. But
Mhm.
what is that, and my daughter and I were talking about this the other day because she's like, Mommy, I'm getting rid of the martyr thing. It's a generational curse. I'm getting rid of that martyr thing. I'm not doing it. You know, like, but I mean, why do we all feel like that? You know, and Tia, chime in, whatever, babe. You know, like, why do we always feel like we have this obligation to
Yeah.
take it all on? Because we do.
Yeah.
I do it every day.
Yeah.
And I'll, piggyback off of what you're saying, how we have this superwoman syndrome that we're dealing with, we have been pushing, especially in the last couple of years, for Black women to be a boss, right? This has been like the cultural thing, you're a bad girl if you're a boss, right? But I say, at what cost, right?
Mhm.
Be a boss, but at what cost? And it's costing us our health. It's
Right.
costing us our life. And it's not worth it. We can be a boss in different ways, but not in a way that we really push it by. You think about women, before I actually got married, you're working all of these jobs and doing all of this stuff. You have your own business. You're working for corporate America. You're trying to be mom. You're trying to be wife. You're trying to be, the single dating woman, whatever that may look like. But it's a lot on us. And even now that I am married, and run a nonprofit organization, like, I don't stop. Black women are still dying, and I have to have boundaries. And so it is a challenge. And you talk about racism, I experienced that in my job. And I remember this white man, he got in my face and he put his hands in my face. And in that moment, I mean, he was like, just in my face, and I couldn't do anything about it. I wanted to, but I held myself together. But when I left his office, I started to break. And I was angry. I was so angry, and I felt so unprotected. I had another director that was in the office with me, and she came to me and she was like, go home, go home, because I can't even imagine how you're feeling right now. And she said, you did so much better than me, because I would have done so and so and so. So the next day when I went back into her office, and I was literally shaking when I went back to her office, and I said, excuse my language, but I had to sit there and eat shit. Excuse me. But I couldn't protect myself. And I was so hurt that I was treated like that for no reason. He just felt like that's something that he could do because he's a white man, white privilege. And it was so hurtful for me. Again, you talk about the stress in the workplace, you're trying to climb the corporate ladder and those types of things. And those are stressors that we deal with day in and day out.
Yeah, every day we do. And it's funny. I love how you described it though as shifting. And my friends used to tease me because I'm a Gemini and say, let's see, how many Rickies are there? And I started thinking about it. And there were a lot of Rickies.
Mm.
Like, because I know, and one of them was the corporate Ricky.
Right.
One of them was the corporate Ricky. I can't remember. I think we counted 6, like Mama Ricky, don't mess with me, Ricky. I mean, if you think about it, it's shifting. It is shifting. And like having this persona whatever you need to do to get whatever you need done in that moment.
Yeah. Yeah. And
people is who they are.
And it's something we naturally do. It's something I think we're even as young Black women taught as we're being groomed and raised. And I don't know of very many other people that sort of do that to the extent that we do it, and if we lived in a society that we were just accepted for exactly as we were, right? And we didn't need to live up to this ideal and standard, then that wouldn't be necessary in our day-to-day lives, right? But because we are who we are, we're Black women, and we are not the standard, we are not white women, we are not white men, it causes us to have to navigate the world in a different way. And, that's not easy, and it's not normal. Like, we shouldn't have to, but that is kind of what our society requires of us. And so that's the piece that is like really difficult to capture. It's really difficult as a researcher to quantify. And when I talk about it conceptually with other Black women, they're like, yep, nope, I get it. I do it. You go and you talk to the NIH about it, and they're like, well, talk to me about this shifting thing, right? And it's like, oh gosh, If you don't live it, you don't experience it. It's hard to understand.
We need to write an article for Black Doctor about shifting.
Yeah. Yeah. We actually have a few experts at my institution that look at this concept in relation to cardiovascular disease and lupus and all sorts of other things that, plague our people, Black women. But it's something that I think about often. And I think there is more shifting the higher up the ladder you go, right? And so when I'm thinking about that and I'm looking at our data, it all matches. It makes perfect sense that there are bigger disparities and higher socioeconomic women that live in these areas because they're experiencing more insults, they're having to shift more, they're having to change more, and all of that stuff accumulates, right? And it drives carcinogenesis, the cancer process, and often doesn't have good outcomes. And so that's something we're really trying to quantify as best we can.
So interesting, even like I never thought about the higher up you go, the more stress you have, but it's so true because you're probably more likely to be surrounded by white people in your workplace.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Right.
Those insults come almost daily,
Not last week doing a presentation that we did.
Exactly. Exactly.
Amazing, like people from NIH, like.
Yeah.
God.
And just like Tia, like you said, you just had to sit there and eat it. That's what I felt like doing that presentation. They're saying all sorts of ignorant and biased things, and we have to sit there and we have to keep our composure. And when really, like, the innate response is to react. And so we're fighting against that innate response, and that fight comes with changes,
Yeah.
So
yeah, gosh.
that is what happens. And on a bigger scale, like, so those are the things that are kind of happening, I think, day to day, individual to individual. But some of the bigger, broader concepts like the historical redlining is one that we've thought deeply about. And so we think about how that relates to generations ago, our grandparents and great grandparents' ability to accumulate wealth that could be then passed down to future generations of Black women and Black men. We think about how that drove our built environment. So a lot of areas that were historically redlined don't have grocery stores. They have convenience stores, they have McDonald's, but they don't have sidewalks, they don't have parks, they don't have farmers markets. Many of them are situated and positioned very nearby toxic sites, Superfund sites that emit all kinds of environmental toxins. And so when you think about that in the context of breast cancer, a lot of those chemicals are what we call endocrine disruptors. And you guys are probably very aware, 70% of breast cancers are hormonally responsive.
Can you explain that a little bit for
Yeah. So
that's a big word.
Yeah. So endocrine is essentially, just the hormone. When we think about it in the context of breast cancer, we think about our estrogen and progesterone receptors, ER positive, negative, PR positive, or negative. And so those endocrine disrupting chemicals can actually change the way those hormones are processed in the body, making it easier for hormones to bind to the tumor and then feeding that tumor. And so if you live in an area that has a high level of those chemicals, then you are at a higher dose of getting those hormones fed into, and that tumor then progressing. And if the neighborhoods that we live in disproportionately have access to those types of chemicals, then disproportionately, we're going to have those tumors progress, right? One of the biggest disparities we see are in ER positive breast cancer or hormonally responsive breast cancers. And I think it's because even though, that type of breast cancer, has very good treatments, it has, pretty good outcomes, especially compared to triple negative, we are still living in environments that push that tumor to grow. And so it should be that Black women have good outcomes for ER positive, but when you consider the environment that they're living in, these toxic hormonal driving environments, it's not a surprise that Black women are dying more, even with ER positive disease.
Yeah.
And
Wow.
so and that's a reflection of these policies from the 1930s that said, okay, there's a toxic dump site here. This is where a Black neighborhood is going to go, or this is where a neighborhood with a bunch of immigrants is going to go. Right. And even to this day, when we look at the map of Atlanta and other, major cities across the US, you still see disproportionately Black and brown neighborhoods are in environments where we know that there are hazardous chemicals. And so these are the big policies, the racist policies that put us already at a disadvantage without even considering superwoman syndrome and shifting. Like
Right.
at baseline, we're at a disadvantage.
Where you live, just where you live.
Just based off of where you live, right? The funding, census tract, funding is decided based on where you live. Those areas are getting lower funding for infrastructure, for education, for housing. And all of these things are the social determinants of health everybody talks about. And I think we often talk about it like we created it. We didn't create it.
Yeah, exactly. And I think I actually hate those words because that's what it sounds like. It sounds like we put ourselves in these positions or in this whatever. Like, why can't you live in a neighborhood with a Whole Foods?
Right.
And people talk about it, white people talk about like it's our fault.
Right. Yeah.
Big bucket you can put stuff into that they can blame on us, which is
right. Which is, crazy to me. I even think about something as simple as obesity, right? Like it's a phenotype, and we know that it is a risk for 13 different types of cancer. And I'm an obesity researcher. It's actually one of the parts of my research that I really love. And people are like, eat well and exercise. And I'm like, but that's not it. Like eat well and exercise. Do I have access to eat well? Do I live in a safe neighborhood to exercise? Do I have places to go to do this? Do I live in an area that has endocrine disrupting chemicals that's feeding fat, right? Like it's not just you can't just put the burden on people without looking further upstream of all the policies, practices, procedures that have persisted for decades that have put us in this position. And that is what our research is really trying to illuminate for the general public.
Which is great that obesity isn't necessarily in your control as a person, right?
Yeah.
I started to read this article today and I got disgusted with it and I just put it away. But there's an article on the AARP website about Oprah, because I guess her weight loss is like the buzz, her purple outfits, whatever. And she looks great, right? But I guess, and she finally said, okay, I took the drugs, and so the story was about kind of why she took the weight loss drugs or the basically diabetes drugs to lose, right? Which is now what all the white people are doing. And Oprah did it. And now, but like, who has access to those drugs? You know what I mean? Like
those things are expensive.
Yeah.
Really expensive. And then what are you doing to your health?
Yeah.
On term. And I know if you shut them, if you stop taking the pill,
it's all coming back.
like Cinderella at midnight, right?
Yes.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'll chime in, you're talking about the endocrine disrupting chemicals. We're talking about obesity. One thing that we do at My Style Matters is we're educating teen girls about breast health. But we take it one step further than just breast health. We're also talking about lifestyle factors and helping them to make healthier and safer choices. When we look on social media, Instagram, TikTok, what have you, these young girls are putting so much makeup and products on their bodies, on their faces, on their skin, that it's like, do you know anything about those products that you're using? Do you know anything about the chemical makeup of those products? And when you look in our communities, you talk about the access, right? So we have beauty supply stores in every shopping center. Yeah. We have the greasy spoons in every shopping center. We have the liquor stores in every shopping center. We have the smoke shops in every shopping center. So when you think about having these different types of businesses in our communities. Like I said, where's the farmers market? Where's the Whole Foods? Where's the Sprouts? Where's the Trader Joe's? Aldi's is trying to do something good for us. But even in, some of these other grocery stores that are in the neighborhood that may sell organic products, and I say may, they don't even look fresh. They don't even look like they're worth purchasing.
Right.
So, it's important for us to continue to educate our community and also teaching them how to shop, right? Teaching them how to buy foods or, healthier foods or make healthier choices while they're on a budget. And like I said, going back to the makeup products, that also with the whole estrogen or EDCs, that also has a connection to obesity. So these things are just so important that we need to talk more about. My Style Matters is doing the best that we can, but it takes all of us. And thank you, Ricky, for bringing us on the show today, because we're able to, use our voices to share this information with other people. Next year, we're looking to do some, amazing things when it comes to like the clean beauty, or not clean necessarily because it's not regulated, but safer beauty. And we want to get this word out because it is so important. Also, even helping women to make, healthier choices, kind of guide them through that process. I look on the South Side of Atlanta, and we don't have those resources. Yeah, there's, cancer support community, some of the hospitals may have the fitness programs, but it goes back to access, right? If you live on the South Side of town where they have closed some of the hospital systems down, it's like, how am I going to get there? Nobody's going to want to stay on a bus for hours just to, get to a program. So we've got to bring more of those programs in areas, even though this is a metropolitan city, it's lacking. So we've got to bring more programming into those areas to really help our people live long and live strong.
Yeah. And I think Atlanta is just an example. It happens in every city.
Absolutely.
In DC, there's one area of DC where Dr. Hampton's clinic is. It's the highest mortality rate for Black women. They're finding triple negative in women under 35, under 40, like crazy over it. It's like it's in the drinking water or something. But I think every city has these areas of just, not having what people need. And I see these young girls with like, the purple hair and the green hair and trying to express themselves, but who did that and what are they using? And they don't know any better. You know what I mean? So,
yeah. And it's like it's being pushed on us, right? So when you look,
Instagram, it's not like,
yeah, absolutely. And what I tell people is you can still do all of that. Just do it in a safer way. Yeah. Learning about the products that you're using, you can still wear the makeup, just wear products that are, either pull back on how often you're wearing them, pull back on the things that you look at. Our skin is like our largest organ, right? And so, hey, think about the products that you're using on all of your skin, your lotions, your soaps, and change those products. It's not about stopping what you're doing. It's about, as you say, shifting, right? Making a change in the products that you're using.
Right. Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, no.
General awareness matters. Down, from the products to even knowing that breast cancer disparities exist. We live in this world every day, and I go and I talk, and I'm amazed by how many people don't realize the differences just by race that exist. And knowledge, it is power. It does make a difference. And but we also need some robust policy changes and awareness, and all of those pieces have to come together. But we have to be advocates for us because nobody else is advocating for us.
Right. No, and that goes back to, we have to stop working in silos. We've got to come together and work together to address this. Because if we don't, who will, right? Before the murder of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor, there was not a lot of talk about us, right? Yeah. We were the ones talking about us. And so, when everything took place, and of course, COVID exposed some things, there was a lot of, hey, let's address this issue. But at some point, everybody's going to move on to something else. They're going to say, I'm tired of talking about disparities. Okay, get over it. We saw what has happened with affirmative action. We see what's happening now with some of these, Black women who are, trying to start, joint venture capitals, things like that. I mean, things are happening. And so we are, it's going to go away, not completely, but it's not going to be, we're not going to have the light like we have it now. That light is getting dim.
Right.
And so
Like-
we've got to work together as Black women, not working in these silos to address these issues. We got to save the next generation.
We
We
really,
got to.
and
I
you
mean,
know,
you think about this, when it comes to breast cancer, a lot of us are being affected when it comes to fertility, not just in breast cancer, with a lot of other health ailments, from these products and things that we've been talking about. But if we don't do this, what is that going to look like for the future for Black women and Black people? You're hearing about more and more men are getting diagnosed, right? So again, how are we
like, how are we?
coming together again as a community? You don't have to be in a breast cancer space to address these issues that really and truly affect Black women.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there are so many silos, and we've been trying to like work with other breast cancer, or Tia, you and I together have been trying to put these groups together. And even like when you look at the sororities and the links and Jack and Jill and all of them, and there's a lot of overlap in those groups, but I feel like, our competition is cancer. Our competition is death.
Do that again.
Right? Our competition is cancer. It's not each other. And I think if we could jointly unite to have a unified message and make it come from us. Like I love the work that you're doing with the American Cancer Society, but I still think we need the Black advocacy groups involved in that, and
I don't disagree.
talk about that. So how do we make it, I think one of the reasons why our When We Trial is successful because it's Black women talking to breasties, about breasties, with breasties, by breasties.
Yeah.
We become this voice. We are the voice of trust for our community. And when we can talk about our lived experience, women hear it and men hear it and they say, okay, we can listen to this.
Yeah.
So that's so important for you guys. What you're doing is so important. So just keep hitting the wall and whatever you got to do to, like, by any means necessary, get this message out. And
it's these big organizations, they are a real challenge. And that's one of the reasons that I keep my day job. Like, I love the work that I do at Emory, because at the end of the day, I am the final say. So if I want to go off and do something with My Style Matters, I can do it. If I want to go and do something with Ricky, I can do it. If I want to go, like whatever, these big organizations, there's so much policy.
yeah.
Standard, like there are all these things that go into it. And at the end of the day, I'm always like, so what really is the goal here? Is the goal here to help people? Because like this whole hour meeting we just had, I don't think we helped anybody, and it's a constant push against image. You know what I mean? Like, so I'm definitely hoping that over the next year or so, that we'll get figured out and together.
Hey, cute. Hey.
My 4-year-old. But no, I definitely, and this is what I've said, the part of the study that's launched now is the at-risk cohort. And so we're looking for healthy Black women, never been diagnosed with cancer, because still trying to understand the etiology or what causes triple negative breast cancer is important. Like, the biggest thing we have right now are genetics and having babies, which people can't do anything about, right? Like, so we need to know a lot more about why Black women are getting triple negative breast cancer and other sort of aggressive diseases in the broader cancer space. At some point, we're going to be recruiting survivors of breast, endometrial, and colorectal cancer. And my thing is, we can't do that without partnership with these organizations, right? And so we're going to be looking to you all, to folks that are listening, to really help in those efforts, because, you got to have people that know and understand the experience, know and understand the challenges to make the research relevant and actionable. And it's a fight. It's a fight to get people to understand that concept when they don't live it and experience it every single day.
Yeah. Yeah. I was talking to Dr. Kala at Johns Hopkins the other day, and we're going to work with her on a research study to talk to healthy young Black women, to talk about, if you know the risk factors, what would you be willing to change? Do you know what I mean? Like, to talk about, okay, here's all the risk factors, whether it's using the wrong different shampoo, or using products that are on your body? Is it about, not eating well, or not exercise, or all the factors that could be risk factors for breast cancer? And if you knew what they were and had a real good perspective or understanding of what they were, would you make changes in your life to risk?
Right.
Like, and it's funny because I asked Haley, Haley and I have this long debate about young women in college drinking. Would you stop drinking as a risk factor for breast cancer? I don't know. So at what point, when you know what you're up against, what are you willing to change about your life and your behavior that could potentially help you not get breast cancer?
Yeah, Ricky, that's a great point, because I think back to when I was young. Well, I'm still young, but when I was younger.
Girl, if you're not young, then I am. Okay? Let's even get that conversation.
I think back to before breast cancer. Was it on my radar? Absolutely not. You hear about it, but it was like, oh, it's never going to happen to me, right? It's kind of like when we were in school and we learned about, the whole MAD, right? Moms Against Drunk Driving. We heard about drinking alcohol, and we heard about doing drugs. We had the DARE program. We heard about those things, and we knew about those things.
We heard about AIDS.
We heard about anything. We still did it. We heard about cancer and smoking cigarettes, but guess what? We still did it, right? So it's not until it really hits home, whether it's you or somebody in your family that you're really, really connected to, that you can actually see somebody's going through it, that you start to think about those things. But even now, I think and I laugh because we did a Hagar Hay party, because that's one of the things that we do is offer Hagar Hay parties where we actually go into your home, kind of like the old school Tupperware, party back in the day. But we, grab your sister's circle, and we're educating them about breast health and all of these other things. And then we're teaching them and giving them tools to really take action. And so now that we're giving some of these tools, I kind of get I get feedback from some of these young ladies that they're cleaning up their house, right? They're going through and they're scanning, products that they're using and looking at, oh my God, this has harmful chemicals in there that could be a potential carcinogen. So they get rid of it. So I appreciate that now we have some of those tools that's really helping people. But when we were growing up, we didn't have those tools. So I think the more tools that we are, the more things that we can give people to equip them to take action versus just telling them, I think that is something that is beneficial and helpful. We got to sit down with them and not just tell them, but really be able to show them some of these things. And the more Black women that are sharing their voices and sharing their stories, when we were growing up, we just saw white women, right? In the commercials, in the movies, like we didn't see us in cancer, right? But now we're starting to see that more and more. I think about The Best Man, right? Do you remember when The Best Man came out at Christmas? Yeah, and his wife died from breast cancer. Like, to see that visually, it's kind of like, whoa, So
that could be me, right?
Exactly. That could be me. Right. That could be my story, Right. But the more and more that we come out and we have these conversations, when I go out, I bring my hair. Like I still have the hair that I lost, and people look at it like, oh my God, that's a bundle. I could buy that. But, they kind of chuckle about that. But I show the pictures. I have a photo album that I bring with me that they can actually see what I went through.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's kind of that it makes it surreal that, hey, it wasn't on my radar, just like it's not on your radar, but it can happen to you just like it happened to me. And the one thing that saved my life is because I had my aunt who was diagnosed with breast cancer. She wasn't a blood relative, but I learned about self-breast exams in the 7th grade, the same time that my auntie was going through breast cancer. But in my family, my mom was like, we're not going to talk about it. She lost her breast. So my mind was like, oh my God, I don't want to lose my breast. I better check them. But that is what helped to save my life. So I think the more and more we have these conversations and talk about it, the more things will eventually change. We're planting seeds in these young girls' minds. Somebody else will come back and water it, And I remember before I started the Breast Health Matters program, I was at a school, and it was with a white organization. And one of the young girls, they were teaching them about breast health. And one of the young Black girls said, hey, are there any cancers that affect Black women greater than white women. And so the nurse said no. And, I lost it. And I was like, wait a minute. I said, that's not true. I said, triple negative breast cancer. And she said, well, I don't really want to get into that right now. And she said, well, if you want to, talk, you can. And of course, I just, shared everything with the young ladies and they start talking to me afterwards. But the disappointing part of that was there was a missed opportunity. That may be that child's only time hearing this message. And she may be the influencer in her home to go back and tell her mom or her grandmother or whomever that she's, what she learned at school that day. So we've got to even be more mindful. And that's why I said, you know what, I got to be the one to do it, because obviously you doing it is not working, right? Based on what was said to this young lady. But it's so important that we really, not only are talking to them about it, but giving them the tools of what to do.
What to do, how to deal. Yeah. Well, yeah. And you hit on so many things here too. I think for one thing, a really great thing about talking to young women is that they're hopefully going to go home and talk to their mamas or their aunties, some other women in the family. They're going to make a conversation about it, which we know has to happen. Right. And so I think that we share with Love My Girls and with our HBCU interns, same kind of thing. Like, how do we talk to these women? And we actually ask them to make a video with their mom. And in almost every circumstance, it's the first time they ever talked to their mom about it. But at least conversations happening. So it's so important for these young women to talk to their moms, and then you hopefully hit some other generations. But
I was going to say, Ricky, we even talk to pregnant women.
Yeah.
Because they need to understand, pregnancy is a critical time point when they're exposed to these EDCs, these endocrine disrupting chemicals, right? And then they need to know about what are they putting on their babies, because that's also a critical time, right, in which they're exposed to. So we're having those conversations with pregnant women. We do these, we work with another organization, but we do their baby showers. And we come and we talk and we do things like self-care and have those talks because they don't know, and some of these moms are like really, really young. And so when we equip them with the tools and we show them, they're like, oh my goodness, so I can't buy this. Well, what do you think I should buy? And so we kind of give them, some tools and resources that they can utilize. But the more we talk about this, and here's the thing, a lot of the more safer products, and I'll just say it like that, they do cost a little bit more. But the problem is because the demand is not there. The more and more we educate, the more and more we can say, we want this product to help those prices to go down so that more people can afford those products. But it's important. And one thing that I've been working with is the Non-Toxic Black Beauty Project, where we have identified over 80 Black-owned brands that have been vetted that are safer for Black women and men. And so we have about over 800 products that are made by Black people for Black people. And so, I always
put that on our page. We need to post that.
Yep. And so that's something that we, for anybody who's listening, if you're a Black-owned business and you make, products that are safe, and I'll use air quotes clean because that's what most people say, even though the word is not regulated, it's, reach out to us. We can help, get you into the system because we want to get more Black-owned businesses that have safe products for us that are intended for Black women.
Right.
And men.
And that also sort of helps the global conversation around Black women's health, right? Like if we are investing in products that are made for us or safe for us and companies that are run by us, like it helps our health, it helps Black economics. It's an entire ecosystem that we can create, right? And for those that aren't affected by breast cancer, there are overlapping etiologies or causes between breast cancer and cardiovascular disease and all sorts of other things that disproportionately affect Black women. And so, you may say, well, I don't have a family history of breast cancer. I don't know anybody that's been affected by breast cancer. But doing some of these things can also improve your health in other aspects of your life where you may be at higher risk, right? And so I think, again, going back to the collective of, every little bit matters, right? Like we're focused on breast cancer because that's kind of our heart. But, just thinking about Black women's health in general, like we've got to be educated. We've got to be knowledgeable. Ricky, to your question about like, would you change your behavior? maybe not. Like I wouldn't give up ice cream, but there may be something else I would give up if I knew it caused cancer, right? And so just having the power to make those decisions, I think is so important for us.
Or being conscious of it, being conscious of it.
Yes, exactly.
You know, this is going to happen. But and to your point earlier, Lauren, it doesn't matter how much money you make. It doesn't matter where you live. It doesn't matter. It really, it takes everybody's at risk. And so we can't, keep blaming it on, well, you didn't have any money, or you were a little poor little black girl. It's
Yeah, no, that went out the window. And I'll share a quick story with your audience that really just changed, I think, the course of like my research and thinking about this. In 2021, I was actually doing a photo shoot for Emory for my redlining work. My family was with me. We were on Atlanta's Beltline. So my husband took the kids to kind of do some laps while I was doing the photo shoot. And during the photo shoot, I was starting to become more and more uncomfortable. My stomach was hurting. And by the end, it was just like intolerable. And so I'm walking back to the car trying to find my family, and I'm in so much pain. I end up on the sidewalk in fetal position because like I can't even walk anymore. And people are just kind of looking at me. It's COVID, right? Like this is the height of COVID. Nobody's like coming up and helping. My husband finally gets back and he's like, what is going on? And I'm like, I don't know. I literally feel like I am in labor, and I had all three of my kids naturally. And so like it felt that pain.
that.
Yeah. And I finally, I called my mom, and she was like, Lauren, if you say you're in pain, you're in pain. Like you've had 3 natural births, like you need to go to the hospital. And so she came over, and my husband took me to one hospital. And he wasn't able to come in with me. And so I'm just sitting in the waiting room, like crying in pain. And I hear the woman at the desk tell someone it's like 4 hours to triage. And so I crawled over to the desk literally, and I was like, I'm sorry, how long until I see somebody? And she's like, 4 hours. And I said,
Oh
I'm not going to make it. And she said, I can take your name off the list. And I just started crying. I was like, no, I am not going to make it. And she was like, would you like me to take your name off the list? And so I called my husband. He literally fought with the security guard to come in, pick me up off the floor. And he said, you need to pick up your phone and call your friends at Emory, because I'm taking you, that's where I work, I'm taking you there. And my colleagues literally came from everywhere in the institution to the emergency room to come and get me. And I was ultimately diagnosed with a cecal volvulus. So it's a basically like a knot in your intestine that is very rare. It's one in a million. They didn't even know how to deal with it. So I had a colleague actually call a surgeon, the only surgeon in Georgia that could actually do this surgery, out of his sleep, and said, Lauren is in the hospital. This is what she has. We need you to operate. I had open surgery. I have a 10-centimeter midline cut in my stomach, open surgery. And when I finally came out of surgery and he was talking to me, he said, Lauren, if it had been 4 more hours, you would have died. You would have died. And as I sat in the hospital for the next 6 days, like nobody with me because I couldn't have visitors.
Right.
Nobody in that first hospital, I wasn't a professor. I didn't have a PhD. I didn't have good insurance. I didn't have like the only thing that they saw was this black face.
Yeah.
Right. All of those other things didn't
right.
save me. And I also realized that my privilege, what white people walk around with every single day, is what saved me. My ability to have colleagues at a hospital to come and get my butt out of the ER is what saved me. And that is the privilege. One second, Austin. That's the privilege that they have that they don't see every single day, that I recognized in that moment. Because it had been anybody else, like they would have died.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah. And that is literally why this whole like racism piece of it is so important for me, because it's happening every day. People are being overlooked for no other reason than the fact that they're a black face.
And it's happening with childbirth. It's happening with cancer. It's happening with heart disease. It's happening all around. And it's happening even with research, with clinical trials. We're not know, hey, Austin, you want your mama? Hey,
He's
Austin,
fine.
what are you gonna get for Christmas? What'd you ask Santa for?
You gonna tell her?
You can tell me? You can tell me because I have a, like a direct line to Santa and I can call him and tell him and get some cred for get your present for you.
He's being silly. Trucks. He's a truck kid.
Oh,
All
truck.
trucks, all the
Did your mommy
time.
bring you a truck home from London? She bought you a bus. Did you get a bus?
Miss Ricky saw your London bus. Did
I
you
saw
tell
your
her
bus.
you liked
You
it?
like your bus?
Yeah.
Not the real deal too. Did you see the video? We took the video, right? Yeah, we saw the bus, right? Oh my gosh. Gosh, you guys, we have so much work to do on this, but I so appreciate what you guys are doing, and I'm so excited to work with you more, Lauren, on this project. We have a secret we can't tell today, but we're going to start to uncover some of these things that will help us. But it starts with talking to your families too, So Amanda, my 38-year-old daughter, is about to have a prophylactic mastectomy because we have 3 generations of cancer. I don't have any genetic mutations, but we have this. And so she called me this morning. So mommy, I just talked to grandma, my mother, and grandma told me some new news that we didn't know. And she said, so she told me that my grandmother, my mother's mother, had a hysterectomy when my mother was 14. And it's all hush hush. What do they do? We don't really know why. And that her mother died of ovarian cancer. Now, I talk to my mother. We talk about this stuff all the time. Know her story, like love my girls, like she's always around these conversations, but still, I don't know. We have no idea. And I haven't talked to her since, like what made her think about that today with my daughter. Right. So think about, and we are an intentional family. I'm always, well, who had what? Well, who died of what? Well, what happened there? I'm like the pain in the ass for everybody in the family. And so, but all of a sudden my mother brings this new information that we didn't know today.
That happens so often. It happens so often. I told my mom once, my kids are always like, Mima, how old are you? And she's like, I'm not telling you how old I am. I was like, no, we're not going to do that. Tell them how old you are, because something happens to you. They go into a doctor's office and they say, oh, my Mima passed of whatever. First thing the doctor is going to say is, how old was she? And if they can't tell the doctor how old you were, that is an essential piece of information that is missing. I'm like, stop with that, mom. Like, we've got to do better with communicating our concerns, our health, our status, all of that stuff.
Everything about it. So, and we are aware families. So what about the families that aren't aware, that aren't talking about it, that are hiding?
Right.
And that's why I think talking to young women is so critical, Tia, because, they can call the grandma.
Yeah.
Like, so Amanda, my mom told that to Amanda, not to me.
Yeah.
Right. But to my daughter.
It's different. The relationship with the grandmother and the granddaughter is completely different.
Yeah.
And so, yeah. And what I found, prior to my grandmother passing, like we could have conversations that I didn't even have with my mom, or she didn't have with my mom. So I think even as time progresses and the world changes, we're learning to be more open. One of the things that we do when we do the Hey Girl Hey parties and we have the mother and the daughter there is we do role plays and we get them up and getting them comfortable. And what I always say is, when it came down to our puberty, right, and periods, like sometimes our mothers would buy, depending on who you are, those little kits, those period kits, right? So we could, we get those for our little girls or whatever, and we get excited about the period. But I'm like, why aren't you talking about breast health? The schools are not talking about breast health. They can talk about, sex, but they won't talk about breast health. Like, what is up with that? I don't get it, but that's kind of where we're stepping into play. And I wanted to mention this to you. So I do hear when we talked about, hey, if you knew all these risk factors, what would you do? What would you change? And I remember my grandfather, he used to say, well, I gotta die. I'm gonna die from something, so I'm just gonna die happy.
Yeah, my girlfriend's saying that too. I eat bacon every day. I'm gonna die, whatever.
Yeah, right? And I always tell them, I say, you're right. We're all gonna die, but do you want to suffer? And that's when I didn't think about that. I say, yeah, it's about quality of life, right? So yeah, you want to die happy. But if you continue to do these things, and sadly, if you end up sick or you get breast cancer or whatever, then your quality of life now suffers. So is that what you want?
Right.
you know, and it makes them think. Like we have to say things to get people
To
thinking.
think, to think,
Yeah.
and to think about what they're up against.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. I gotta put on, Austin, check my hat out.
Oh, that's cute.
Can you see it? Can you see it lighting up?
Oh my goodness. Do you
And
see?
guys, and when you come to my house, I will show you the Christmas tree.
Oh, cool. I'll see if I can get you one. Okay. I got it for my credit. But I want to say
Mhm.
thank you guys to our audience. Thank you to our sponsors. Thank you to Amgen and Genentech and Novartis support our show. And thank you to Black Doctor. You know, it's this time of the year where we're just
Thank you for drinking.
and we'll try to get this episode up on Facebook, but thank you guys so much. And, you know, to be continued, I think we already scheduled our next episode. So in a couple of months to be continued, because, you know, we can't talk about this enough. And we can't talk about how, you know, it doesn't matter where you live, who you are. Breast cancer is more fatal for Black women at any age, any stage, any subtype, even what people call the good ones, the hormone receptor positive ones. So we can't let it go. And you know, I love you guys so much. And we'll see you in the new year. This is our last show for this year.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you so
Merry
much for
Christmas.
Tia.
So Merry Christmas, everyone. And bye.
Bye.
Austin.
Bye.
So glad you came on with us.
He can't stay away from Zoom. He's a pandemic baby, so he's been
I
on
know.
Zoom his whole life.
But I know, same with Leia, my middle granddaughter, same thing there. They love Zoom. They grew up with it. But thank you guys. And everybody, check the breasts that you love. We know you have the pair. It's the holidays. Start the conversation with your families. We're gonna send an e-blast this week about, you know, you're in the room, you're at dinner with the family, everybody's in the room, all the grandparents are visiting, everybody, the company's all coming over, the family's all coming over. So talk about it. Talk about who had what, who died of what, who has what now. And, you know, is your blood pressure high, whatever the things are, and write it down, make a book for the family that you can put together and have these conversations. So the time is now, got homework to do. So see you guys in the new year. Thank you so much.
Love that.
Take care. Happy
Bye.
New Year. Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.